Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, second time today, and we are talking about the Queen's Gambit accepted. We spoke about the Queen's Gambit declined, and just how awesome it is. It really is awesome. I didn't use those words in the video, but it is so flexible. I was just thinking about it now, that's why I had to pause. It's so flexible, it's so cool, it's so classical, but it can be very boring, not gonna lie. And it's very symmetrical, it can be very boring. So what if we take the pawn? What if we add some excitement and we play the Queen's Gambit accepted? Well, that's what we're talking about. Queen's Gambit accepted, and it's this position here, d takes c4. And unlike the Queen's Gambit declined, you don't really get this by transposition. There are ways in like various Englishes and stuff where you can get to it. But normally, if someone's going to play the Queen's Gambit accepted, they play as if here, d4, d5, c4, d takes c4. And here there are several approaches. The most common one is knight to f3. Securing, just developing a piece into the center. Knight to f6, now stopping e4. And then we play e3 to get our pawn back. And they play e6. So after we take, they can play c5, striking back in the center. And here there's a very easy way to transition to an endgame. All you do is you play castles. They play a6, getting ready to play b5 and kick your bishop. You take the pawn, they take your queen, you take back, and we take here. And this is deadly boring, and most grandmasters draw this immediately. We bring the bishop back to e2, knight bd7, knight d2, knight bd2, and you get this, which is very symmetrical, very boring. It's the same pawn structure, it's the same pieces, queens are off the board, and you go home. But we want to add excitement. So, I mean, there are ways to make this line more exciting. You don't have to trade queens, and it all requires careful calculation. So, what if we did instead, we played e4 immediately. Not here, e4 immediately. Then it gets very exciting. Because e5 is the most common move to play. But I've had games where it's knight to f6. And then you play, you can play e5. And then you force knight d5, and now you can take, hitting the knight. It will retreat once again. And then bishop d3 is fine, setting up various discoveries. Bishop d3 is nice because your opponent might go here, free queen, and then you go here, and then they cry and resign. So bishop d3 is a move. Alternatively, just stopping here, reminder, moves are in the description. Alternatively, you've got bishop b3. Just keeping it on what can be a useful diagonal. If this file ever opens up, there have been various traps where bishop takes here and then queen takes queen is a free queen. And that is one way to play. But the most common move played by really strong players is e5. And then here, you play knight to f3. And then probably ed4. Bishop takes c4. We leave the pawn there in the center. Knight to c6. Short castles. The bishop offers an exchange, and now we pin the knight. So the center pawn needs to be defended. It does get defended by the dark squared bishop. And now here, a common plan might just be to do this, but the bishop will be fine. But you can go for something very attacking, because you can play b4, sacrificing the pawn to try and win the center pawn back. When they ignore that, a4. And then a6, take, and you go here. And this could be a position that you reach. And this is far more imbalanced, far more dynamic than anything you would have got traditionally. I mean, you've still got your bishop coming out, and black is temporarily up a pawn because they did take, and they've now got this, which can be a problem. You need to make sure it's properly blockaded. But this could be a very, very exciting position to play. And the engine thinks it's only point 2. Point 3 is slightly better for white, and that's because they move first. Alternatively, people might consider pushing the pawn, d5. It's playable, but it is slightly better for black. Reason being, knight to f6 targets immediately, and then after knight to c3, you get c6, offering the exchange of pawns. We take back, and then here they pin the knight, which is the biggest problem. So you need to find this move queen b3. It's very important, because if you take on c3, and then take back with the pawn, you might think this is a free pawn. But now it's better for white. You see the eval bar jump up because of here. And then you need to play Queen F6, creating counterplay. Because knight takes c6 is a massive problem because of bishop takes f7, king gets forced out, you bring the bishop back, attack the queen, and we maintain a big attack. You're quickly going to get this bishop out and long castle if you want to get your rook onto this file, or, knight out short castles, getting the king to safety, and, getting rooks on these files, and obliterating the king, and this is substantially better for white. Liches stopped responding, so we'll just have to wait a second. If it takes too long, I will edit this part out. We'll have a funny clip from SpongeBob, and then we will be returning.
A few moments later.
Yes, so we are back. Queen b5 is the move here to kind of continue the attack, and this is all stuff that can happen. But there's also ways where, let me just find now in my variations, e4, e5, and now d5, yes. Knight to f6 obviously has to be played because you target this and you keep eyes on this as well. Knight to c3 is the move that makes the most sense, but you could run into this immediate problem with the bishop coming in. Doesn't work. Black might think it makes sense because you undermine the defense of this, but queen a4 is a problem because you can't block with the knight. So that is just a trick that if you're playing with black, you mustn't fall into, that you're going to drop a bishop, and you're going to be considerably worse, and this is when your opponent clicks resign or waits for their time to expire because they're a massive coward. Anyway, so c6 gets played, and yes, you can do this where we trade everything, but this is just no good. This is no good. Better for black. I don't think I did all those trades correctly. Yes, dc6, queen d1, king d1. Very important. That's what you need to play. You need to lose the right to castle, knight c6, and then bishop c4. And this is how you would continue. Because also there's no pin coming, and you can play like f3. But this is better for black, although the one game in the Liches database, after bishop to c5, does have it as a draw. The game ended in a draw after like f3 and stuff like that. So this is one way to play a slightly different variation, allowing the queen trade. And you just got to do stuff. So that's e4. There is one final variation instead of e4, which is just e3, which is much quieter. You look to immediately regain the pawn. Here, knight to f6, allowing the recapture of the pawn with bishop c4. e6, going again for the c5 plan, creating counterplay in the center. Knight to f3 gets played, and c5. Short castles, and this looks very similar to what we've already had. There are some fun lines, though. There are some fun lines after e3, because I'm pretty sure... Can you not play this? Pretty sure you can, yeah. But then a4, b4... Bishop takes. Yeah, knight to f6, and this is a way to play. Where you get this pawn here, you make them commit to a4. Out of curiosity, after a4, can you not play? No. The only playable moves are b4, bishop b7, to then stop anything, and b takes a4. That's really fun. Obviously committing the knight here walks into b4. That is the problem that you run into. Yeah, so this is a way to play. If you really are adventurous with black, you can play something like b4, where it gets pushed, takes, knight comes out, and here it is better for white, because that pawn is a weakness, and could be rounded up, but you can always secure it and get a nice clamp on the queen side. Let's say, so knight to f3, this a5 move is always there, but probably e6, short castles, bishop e7, knight bd2, short castles, b3 here, not allowing it to go any further, not allowing this to go any further, and securing your bishop, and a nice square for your knight if your bishop ever drops back. Bishop b7, now you're using the fact that you played b4 to get a nice active bishop, and bishop b2 so that you can maybe play this and open up your own bishop and create some counterplay. And this is a really cool position. There might be times where white decides to play a5 so that black can't play a5, and then this can become a longer term problem. And this is very dynamic, and this is why the Queen's Gambit is, or the Queen's Gambit accepted, is also played by players, particularly if they don't want to go into Queen's Gambit declined lines, which can be notoriously boring. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned. Remember, moves are in the description down below, so have fun.